How, when, and where is our topic that we are going to cover. Here we will see the introduction, then we will go through how important dates are, then which dates, then what were the British views on dates and about its criticism also, then Indian perspective on dates, how do we periodize the date, then problem with this method, modern historians' view, then why periodization matter, and administration produced records, what official records don't tell, and the last one is the role of historians. Okay, basically the chapter is about the dates, the importance of dates, how, when, and where. So let us start the topic. See here. History is not just about dates, it's also about how we interpret events and sources. So basically it is not about dates only, the history. It is that how we interpret the events and the sources also. Okay, so what are the sources that just tell us about the history? The chapter begins by questioning how historians divide time into periods like ancient, medieval, and modern. These periods were often decided by the British historians to suit their point of view. So the chapters just tell us about how historians have been divided the periods like ancient, medieval, and modern. And not only this, the British historians just divide it to suit their point of view. Now, how important dates are, why the dates are important? History is certainly about changes that occur over time. It is about finding out how things were in the past and how things have changed. So basically it is about finding out the things how it were there in the past and how things have been changed. British historians emphasize dates of battles, governor general's rules and British victories. So earlier the British historians they just give importance to the date of battles, then the governor general's rule and the British victories. This created a colonial viewpoint where only British actions seemed important, and as a result, only the British actions were given importance. Now, this periodization ignores economic, social, and cultural changes. However, these historians were just giving us the information about the battles, the Governor General's rules, and British victories, but they were ignoring the economic, social, and cultural changes. Now, we will see which dates. When we study history, we often ask when did it happen? So dates help organize historical events, but the chapter argues that choosing which dates are important is not neutral. It often reflects the historian perspective. However, as we just proceed with the chapter, we understand that dates are important, but it is not neutral and it often reflects the historian's perspective only. Now, what were the British view on dates? British historians choose date related to British rule as important. For example, 1757 Battle of Plassey, 1857 First War of Independence, 1947 India's independence. They use these to emphasize their achievement and control. So in this way, they choose the date and just they put emphasize, give importance to their achievement and control. The history they wrote was often about governor generals like Warren Hastings and Lord Dalhousie, then what were the laws that they have been passed, and about the British military victories. That's why there was a criticism regarding the British view on dates, and it was the chapter argued that these dates only highlight political events, especially those involving British rulers, right? And it ignores the economic condition of the Indians, changes in social life, growth of education, Indian resistance movement. So these were ignored by the British historians. Now, Indian perspective on dates was also there. So that is modern Indian historians focus on the lives of ordinary people and for them different dates matter. For example, when did railway begin to affect rural India? When did a certain famine occur and when did new education policies emerge? So Indian historians focus on the lives of ordinary people and for them these dates are matter, okay? How do we periodize? So how we periodize the time? Let us see. So colonial periodization was going on earlier. The British historian used to do. In this way, they just divide the time. So British historian divided Indian history to suit their own colonial narrative and they used religion as the basis for dividing Indian history. So they will give Hindu period ancient India, Muslim period as the medieval India, and British or European period as the modern India. So as per their convenient, they just divided the history. Now what was the problem with this method? It shows religion as the main basis of historical change, which is not always true. It ignores the diversity of the culture, economics, and societies in each period. Moreover, it makes British rule look like a modern civilizing force while showing earlier period as backward. So this was the problem with the colonial periodization, that first of all it shows only religion, and that was also not true, and it ignores the diversity of the culture, and finally they show that the modern period, that is the British era, was more civilized, while showing that the ancient and the medieval period was backward. Now, what was the modern historians' view regarding this? So, modern historians don't agree with the old religious based periodization. Instead, they prefer to classify history based on economic changes like the agriculture and the industry, social structure like the caste, class, gender roles, and cultural development like education, art, and literature. And what were the example of the modern historians? Like the early societies, they just talk about this one, then medieval kingdoms and trade, colonial rule and resistance, nationalism and independence. So this type of division was more inclusive. It talk about common people, not just king or rulers, and look at how people live, not just who rule. So modern historian view was like this. So they used to talk about the classify the history on the base of economic, social, and cultural development. Now, why does periodization matter? So it shapes how we understand history. It can either highlight or hide importance, events, and people. A biased periodization like the colonial one can create wrong impression like India was uncivilized before British rule. Okay, that's why periodization matter, because it will help us to understand the history, isn't it? And it will highlight or hide important events and the people also. Moreover, if it is biased, then it can create a wrong impressions. Now, administration produced records. The British were obsessed with documentation. They kept official record of every instruction, decision, and policies. The British preserved documents carefully in record rooms. Surveys were important, so cartography survey, that is the map, revenue survey, census, etc. was there. This helped them to control and govern India more effectively, right? So Britishers were putting emphasis on administration to put the records, so that's why they just do all these things to control and govern India more effectively. Now, what official records don't tell? Even though they put the record, some things were missing on the record, and they were official record reflect the British perspective, not the Indian viewpoint. For example, policies may seem good on paper but could harm Indians in reality. To understand Indian society, we need to look at the diaries of the people. What were the accounts of the travelers, folk tales and songs, and newspapers and the letters? So even though they maintain the records, but these records fail to tell all these things. Now, what is the role of historians here? Historians use many sources to write history, not just official records. They ask questions, analyze evidence, and interpret facts. Historical writings have changed. Modern historians focus more than on lives of common people, like the peasants, worker, women, and tribes, rather than just king and ruler. Okay. So this was the chapter about how, when, and where. Here we have seen how important dates are and what was the British view on dates. Then criticism was also there. And then Indian perspective on dates. And how do we periodize? What was the problem with this method? Then modern historians' view and examples of modern periodizations. And administration produced record, what official record don't tell us, and the role of historians. So this much for this video. Let us meet with the new topic in the next video.